Look at me, the man said quietly. Alina didn't. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase instead. I said look at me. Something in his voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried weight. The kind that made people listen even when they didn't want to. She lifted her eyes. And for a second, she forgot how to breathe. He was standing too close. Tall. Still. Dressed in black like the night had chosen him. His gaze didn't rush over her. It stayed. Studied. Like he was trying to figure out something she hadn't even said yet. You're already breaking the first rule, he added. Alina swallowed. I just got here. Exactly. A pause. Then. You're not supposed to feel anything in this house. If you're new here, pause for a second. Because this story? It's not just about love. It's about the kind of feeling that shows up quietly and ruins every plan you had. So before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Alina didn't come to the Blake mansion looking for anything close to love. She came because she had no other option. 2 months ago, her life had a shape. A small apartment. A routine. A job that barely paid but at least made sense. Then everything collapsed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just slowly enough that she couldn't stop it. So when the offer came, live-in strategist for the Blake brothers, she didn't ask too many questions. She just packed. The gates alone told her this wasn't normal. Tall. Black. Silent as they opened. The kind of place where people didn't knock. They were expected. Her taxi didn't even wait for her to step out before driving off. Alina stood there for a moment, suitcase in hand, staring at the mansion like it might change its mind and reject her. It didn't. Inside was worse. Or better. She couldn't tell. Everything was clean. Sharp. Expensive without trying too hard. But it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a place where emotions were unnecessary. Don't just stand there. She turned. And that was the first time she saw him. Jefferson Blake. He didn't look like what she expected. There was no stiffness. No cold welcome. He leaned casually against the staircase, sleeves rolled up, like he had just walked out of a life that made sense. You're Alina, right? She nodded. Good, he said, pushing himself upright. I was starting to think you'd run away before meeting us. A small smile tugged at his lips. And, just like that, something in her chest eased. I thought about it, she admitted. Smart girl. He walked toward her, taking the suitcase from her hand before she could protest. You'll like it here, he added. Eventually. Eventually. Not now. I'm Jeff, by the way. I know. Of course you do. He smirked. We're kind of hard to ignore. We. That word stayed longer than it should have. He led her up the stairs, talking like silence offended him. You'll be working closely with us, well, mostly with me. My brother, he paused slightly. He prefers things a certain way. That sounds comforting, Alina said. Jeff laughed softly. You'll see. Her room overlooked the gardens. Wide windows. Soft light. Everything placed like it belonged. For the first time in weeks, she felt something close to relief. This is yours, Jeff said, dropping her suitcase by the bed. Thank you. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he leaned slightly against the doorframe, watching her take it in. You look like someone who's been holding her breath for a long time. Alina blinked. I'm fine. Didn't say you weren't. His tone was gentle. Not pushing. Just noticing. And that was the first problem. Jeff Blake noticed things. Dinner's at 8, he said finally. Try not to be nervous. I'm not nervous. Good, he smiled. Then you won't mind sitting across from my brother. Silence settled between them for a moment. Should I be worried? Jeff tilted his head slightly, like he was considering how honest to be. Let's just say, he doesn't like surprises. 8 o'clock came too fast. Alina stood outside the dining room for a second longer than necessary, adjusting nothing on her dress. Then she stepped in. He was already there. Ethan Blake. Sitting at the head of the table like the room had been built around him. No phone. No movement. Just stillness. And control. His eyes lifted the moment she entered. Not rushed. Not curious. Measured. Like he had already decided something about her and was just confirming it. Sit, he said. No greeting. No smile. Just a command that didn't sound like one. She sat. Jeff walked in seconds later, energy shifting the room the moment he did. Wow, he said, glancing between them. You both look like you're about to negotiate a peace treaty. No one laughed. Well, this is fun, he muttered, taking his seat. Dinner started quietly. Too quietly. Alina focused on not dropping anything, not saying the wrong thing, not. Why did you take this job? Her head lifted. Ethan. Of course. I needed it, she answered honestly. His gaze didn't move. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Silence lingered for a beat. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Interest. You're underqualified, he said. Jeff sighed. Here we go. Alina didn't look away. Then why did you hire me? Another pause. Longer this time. Ethan leaned back slightly, studying her like she was a problem worth solving. Because people who have nothing left tend to be the most useful. The words landed. Not harsh. Just real. Alina nodded once. Then I won't disappoint you. Jeff watched her differently after that. Like he hadn't expected her to stand her ground. Like he liked that she did. Dinner ended without ceremony. Ethan left first. Of course he did. Alina exhaled the moment he was gone. That bad? Jeff asked. She let out a small laugh. Is he always like that? Worse, actually. She smiled. And something about that smile made Jeff pause. Just for a second. You handled him well, he said. I didn't feel like I did. You did. Silence. Then softer. He doesn't usually engage like that. Alina frowned slightly. That didn't feel like engagement. Jeff chuckled. Trust me. For him? That was practically a conversation. They stood there a moment longer than necessary. Not awkward. Just quiet. Get some rest, Jeff said eventually. Tomorrow won't be easy. When is it ever? She replied. He smiled again. And this time, it lingered. Later that night, Alina couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. Too still. Like it was waiting for something. She stepped out of her room, walking slowly down the hallway, not sure what she was looking for. Maybe air. Maybe distraction. Maybe. Can't sleep. She froze. Ethan. Standing at the far end of the hall, sleeves rolled up, tie gone, looking less composed. But somehow more dangerous. I could ask you the same, she said. He walked toward her slowly. Not rushed. Never rushed. You think too much, he said. You don't think enough. A pause. Then, the smallest hint of a reaction. You're different from what I expected, he added. Good or bad? Undecided. He stopped in front of her. Close enough that she could feel the shift in the air again. That same weight from earlier. You should remember something, he said quietly. What? His eyes held hers. Steady. Unmoving. This house doesn't change for people. Silence. Then. People change for this house. Alina swallowed. Maybe I won't. And for the first time, Ethan looked at her like that might be a problem. Or something worse. Something he didn't expect to want. Morning came too softly for a house that felt so heavy at night. Alina woke up before her alarm. Not because she was rested, but because her mind hadn't really slept. That hallway. That moment. The way Ethan looked at her like she had said something dangerous just by existing. She shook it off. Focus, she whispered to herself. This wasn't why she was here. By the time she stepped downstairs, the house had already come alive in its quiet, controlled way. Staff moved efficiently. No wasted motion. No unnecessary words. Everything here had a rhythm. And she was still trying to find hers. Careful, you're going to walk into the table. Alina turned. It was Jeff. Of course. He was seated casually at the dining table, coffee in hand, watching her like he had been there long enough to notice she wasn't fully present. How long have you been staring at me? She asked. Long enough to know you're thinking about something you shouldn't be thinking about this early. She raised a brow. And what exactly shouldn't I be thinking about? He took a slow sip of his coffee, eyes still on her. My brother. Alina paused. Just for a second. And that was enough. Jeff smiled. Not mocking. Not sharp. Just aware. You're not as unreadable as you think, he added. I wasn't trying to be. Good, he said lightly. Because that wouldn't work here. She sat across from him, reaching for a cup. Is he always up that early? Jeff let out a quiet breath, leaning back slightly. He barely sleeps. Why? That's a question no one asks him. Alina frowned slightly. Then how do you know? Jeff's eyes flickered for a moment. Because I've known him my whole life. There was something in that answer. Something that didn't fully settle. But before she could push further. He's watching you, by the way. Alina blinked. What? Jeff tilted his head subtly. Don't turn around immediately, he said, amused. You'll make it obvious. Her fingers tightened slightly around her cup. I wasn't going to. You were, he cut in gently. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she turned her head. And there he was. Ethan. Standing by the far window, phone in hand, speaking to someone. But his eyes. They weren't on the call. They were on her. Not quickly. Not accidentally. Deliberately. Alina looked away first. She didn't know why. She just did. When she turned back, Jeff was still watching her. Not Ethan. Her. See, he said softly. Something shifted in her chest. And she didn't like how it felt. Don't make it weird, she muttered. I'm not, Jeff replied. You are. She stood up too quickly. I should get started. Running away already? I'm working. MHM. But he didn't stop her. And somehow, that felt worse. The rest of the morning was a blur of information. Documents. Reports. Meetings she wasn't expected to speak in, but was expected to understand. And Ethan? He didn't make it easy. He questioned everything. Every suggestion she made. Every assumption she formed. Every idea she tried to present. Not rudely. Not loudly. Just precisely. Your numbers don't account for external pressure, he said at one point, sliding a document back toward her. They do, she replied, keeping her voice steady. You're just looking at it from the wrong angle. The room went quiet. Jeff leaned back in his chair, watching like he had just found entertainment. Ethan didn't react immediately. He just looked at her. Again. That same stillness. Explain, he said. So she did. And this time. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, there was a pause. A long one. Then, a single nod. Better. That was it. No praise. No softness. But it shouldn't have mattered. And yet, it did. Because for some reason, it felt like she had just earned something. Later that afternoon, Alina found herself in the garden. It was quieter there. Real. Not controlled like the rest of the house. You disappear a lot. She turned. Jeff again. Or maybe you just keep finding me, she said. He smiled. Maybe I do. He walked beside her, hands in his pockets, relaxed in a way the house never was. You're handling him well, he said. Why does everyone keep saying that like it's an achievement? Because it is. She glanced at him. He's not impossible. No, Jeff agreed softly. Just difficult to reach. Alina looked ahead. I don't think he wants to be reached. Jeff didn't answer immediately. He didn't used to be like this, he said finally. There it was again. That's something. What changed? She asked. But Jeff just shook his head slightly. Not my story to tell. They walked a little further in silence. Not awkward. Just filled with things unsaid. Then, can I ask you something? Jeff said. Alina nodded. Why didn't you back down earlier? She frowned. From what? Ethan. A small breath left her. I don't know, she admitted. It just felt like, if I did, I'd disappear. Jeff stopped walking. She did too. He looked at her differently now. Not playful. Not light. Don't, he said quietly. Don't what? Don't disappear. Something about the way he said it. It lingered. Before she could respond, he stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. You don't belong in the background, he added. And for a second, Alina forgot everything else. The house. The job. Even Ethan. Because Jeff. He made things feel simple. And maybe that was the danger. That night, it happened. Not planned. Not expected. Just A moment that stayed too long. Alina was in the kitchen, reaching for a glass when a hand brushed against hers. She froze. Sorry, Jeff said, but he didn't move away immediately. Neither did she. Their fingers were still touching. Lightly. And when she looked up, he was already looking at her. Not playful this time. Not teasing. Something quieter. Something real. Alina, he started. Her heart picked up. Fast. Too fast. Maybe we shouldn't. But he didn't finish. Because in that moment, she didn't step back. And neither did he. Their faces were closer now. Closer than they should be. Close enough that she could feel his breath. Close enough that one more inch. Jeff. The voice cut through the moment like it didn't belong there. They both turned to see Ethan standing at the doorway. Still. Watching. Not angry. Not surprised. Just watching. And somehow, that was worse. Jeff stepped back first. Of course he did. Didn't realize you were still up, he said casually. Ethan's gaze shifted briefly to him. Then back to her. I could say the same. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. And yet, Alina couldn't move. Because Ethan wasn't looking at Jeff. He was looking at her. At her lips. Then her eyes. Like he had just walked into something he wasn't supposed to see. But didn't intend to forget. Get some rest, he said finally. To her. Not Jeff. Then he turned. And left. Just like that. But the air didn't move again. Not immediately. Not even when Jeff ran a hand through his hair, letting out a quiet breath. Yeah, he muttered. That's going to be a problem. Alina didn't answer. Because something had already changed. And she didn't know how to undo it. The house felt different the next morning. Not louder. Not quieter. Just aware. Alina noticed it the moment she stepped out of her room. Like the walls had seen something they weren't supposed to. And now they were waiting to see what she would do next. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. That moment in the kitchen. Jeff's hand against hers. The way he said her name. The way she didn't move away. And worse. Ethan standing there. Watching. Mourning. She turned too quickly to see Jeff. He looked normal. Too normal. Like last night hadn't almost happened. Like his hand hadn't lingered. Like he hadn't almost. Did you sleep? He asked. Alina blinked. A little. Good, he said, studying her for a second longer than necessary. You look like you didn't. She exhaled softly. You don't look much better. Yeah, he smiled faintly. Well, I had something on my mind. Their eyes met. And just like that, the air shifted again. About last night, he started. Don't, she cut in quickly. Not harsh. Just careful. Jeff paused. Then nodded slowly. Okay. But he didn't look away immediately. And neither did she. It was quiet. Too quiet. Alina. She turned. Standing at the end of the hallway was Ethan again. Like he had been there longer than either of them noticed. Her heart did something uncomfortable. Meeting. 5 minutes, he said. No greeting. No glance at Jeff. Just her. And then he walked away. Jeff let out a small breath under his breath. He's never this early about anything unless it matters. Alina frowned. And this matters? Jeff looked at her. Really looked this time. Yeah, he said quietly. It does. That answer stayed with her longer than it should have. The meeting was shorter than expected. Which, in that house, meant something was wrong. Ethan didn't sit this time. He stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, tension sitting in his shoulders like it belonged there. There's a problem, he said. Of course there was. There's a leak in one of our ongoing deals. Internal, he continued. Jeff leaned forward slightly. You're sure? Ethan's jaw tightened just a little. I don't deal in assumptions. Silence follows. Alina's mind started working. Fast. Then we need to narrow access points, she said. Both brothers looked at her. But Ethan didn't respond immediately. He just watched her. Like he was deciding whether to let her step further in. Go on, he said finally. So she did. And this time, she didn't hesitate. She spoke with clarity. With confidence. With something that felt like control. And, for the first time, Ethan didn't interrupt her at all. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment. Then Jeff nodded slowly. That's actually really solid. Ethan didn't nod. He didn't praise. But what he did say was simple. Implement it. And that was enough. Because this time, it didn't feel like approval. It felt like trust. Later that day, everything moved fast. Staff, calls, adjustments. The house no longer felt still. It felt alive. And in the middle of it, Alina found herself pulled into something deeper than she expected. You're good at this. She turned. Jeff again. Always Jeff. I'm trying not to mess it up, she replied. You're not, he said easily. You're holding everything together. She laughed softly. That sounds like too much responsibility. Maybe he stepped a little closer. But you don't look like someone who runs from it. There it was again. That way he spoke. Like he saw something in her she wasn't even sure existed. Why do you keep doing that? She asked. Doing what? Looking at me like that. Jeff paused. Just for a second. Then, because I don't think anyone's looked at you properly in a long time. Her chest tightened. That's not true, she said quietly. Then they did it wrong, he replied just as softly. And for a moment, everything else disappeared again. Until Alina. Her name. Again. But this time, it sounded different. She turned. Ethan stood a few steps away. Not close enough to interrupt. Not far enough to ignore. His eyes moved briefly from Jeff, back to her. I need you, he said. Simple. Direct. But something about it didn't feel like work. Alina hesitated. Just for a second. And Jeff noticed. Of course he did. He stepped back first. Go, he said quietly. She nodded. But something about that moment stayed. Inside Ethan's office, the door closed behind her with a soft click. And suddenly, it felt too quiet, too contained. Ethan stood by the desk, going through a file. But he wasn't reading. Close the blinds, he said. Alina hesitated, then walked over, pulling them shut. The room dimmed. When she turned, he was closer. Not too close, but closer than before. There's something you missed, he said. Her focus snapped back. Where? He stepped beside her, pointing at the document. But instead of stepping away, he stayed there. Close enough that she could feel his presence. Not touching, but there. You're looking at surface movement, he continued. His voice was lower now. Quieter. You need to look deeper. Alina swallowed. Not because of the work, but because she could feel him. Right there. You're distracted, he said. Her eyes lifted. I'm not. Ethan tilted his head slightly. You are. A pause. Why? He asked. That question. It wasn't about work. Alina knew it. He knew it. But neither of them said it out loud. I'm focused, she replied carefully. Ethan watched her. Longer than necessary. Then, stay that way. And for some reason, that felt like a warning. Or maybe, a request. She stepped back first. Because if she didn't, she wasn't sure what would happen. Later that evening, the house slowed again. Like nothing had happened. Like everything hadn't changed. Alina stood by the balcony, staring out at the city lights, trying to clear her head. You always come here when you're thinking too much? She didn't need to turn. She already knew who it was. Jeff. Is it that obvious? She asked. Only to me, he said, stepping beside her. Silence filled the space. Comfortable this time. I don't want things to get complicated, she admitted. They already are, he said gently. She exhaled. I don't want to choose wrong. Jeff looked at her. Not smiling this time. Not light. Then don't choose yet. Her brows pulled slightly. That doesn't help. It does, he said softly. Because right now, you're still figuring out what you feel. And what if I already know? A pause. Do you? He asked. Alina didn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't. Not fully. And that scared her. Jeff stepped a little closer. Not rushing. Not forcing. Then don't rush it, he said. His hand lifted slightly. Like he wanted to touch her. But he didn't. Instead, he let it fall. And somehow, that restraint made it worse. Good night, Alina, he said quietly. Good night. He walked away. And this time, she watched him leave. But something inside her didn't follow. Because somewhere else in the house, there was someone who hadn't said nearly enough. And somehow, she felt it. That night didn't end on the balcony. It followed her. Into her room. Into her thoughts. Into the quiet space where she could no longer pretend she didn't feel anything. Alina sat at the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. Jeff was easy. That was the truth she couldn't deny. Being around him felt like stepping into warmth after standing in the cold too long. He spoke, and things softened. He looked at her, and she didn't feel like she had to defend herself. But Ethan didn't soften anything. He made everything sharper, clearer, harder to ignore. And that was the problem. Because when she was around him, she didn't feel comfortable. She felt seen. And there was a difference. A dangerous one. She didn't realize when she stood up. Didn't think about where she was going. Her feet just moved. The hallway was quiet again. Like it had been waiting. And somehow, she already knew where he would be. Ethan's office door was slightly open. Light spilling through the gap. Alina paused. Just for a second. Then, she knocked softly. Come in. Of course. She stepped inside. He was at his desk, sleeves rolled again, tie gone, the same way he always looked when the world wasn't watching him. Less composed. More real. His eyes lifted. And the moment he saw her, something shifted. Not obvious. But there. You should be asleep, he said. So should you. A pause. Then, the faintest trace of something in his expression. He leaned back slightly. Is there something you need? The question sounded professional. But the air didn't feel like it. Alina stepped further in, closing the door behind her. I need to understand something. Ethan's gaze sharpened. What? She hesitated. Then, you look at me like you're trying not to. Silence. It landed. Not lightly. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Didn't deflect. Didn't dismiss it. He just looked at her. And that was worse. You're observant, he said finally. That's not an answer. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. Alina took another step closer. Then answer me. The room felt smaller now. Ethan stood up slowly. Not rushed. Never rushed. He walked toward her. Step by step. Until there was barely any space left between them. Do you ask everyone questions like this? He asked. Her breath caught slightly. Only when they don't say what they mean. Silence lingered. Then, something broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Because I am trying not to, he said. Her heart stopped. Just for a second. Why? She whispered. Ethan's eyes held hers. Unmoving. Because you shouldn't be something I want. The words were quiet. But they hit harder than anything he had said before. Alina swallowed. Then why does it feel like I already am? That was it. That was the moment. The space between them disappeared without either of them moving. Or maybe they both did. She didn't know who closed the distance first. She only knew. Suddenly, he was there. Too close. Her breath caught again. Ethan's hand lifted slowly. Carefully. Like he was giving himself time to stop. But he didn't. His fingers brushed lightly against her jaw. And everything inside her stilled. Alina. Her name didn't sound the same when he said it. It sounded like something he wasn't supposed to say at all. Her eyes dropped to his lips. Just for a second. And that was enough. He noticed. Of course he did. His hand tightened slightly. Not rough. Just certain. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. She didn't. She couldn't. And that was all it took. He leaned in. Slowly. Not rushed. Not careless. Like he was memorizing the moment before it even happened. And when their lips finally met, it wasn't soft. It wasn't rushed either. It was something in between. Something that felt like it had been waiting. Her hand found his shirt without thinking. Holding. Grounding. And for the first time since she walked into that house, everything made sense. Not because it was easy, but because it wasn't. When he pulled back, it wasn't far. His forehead rested lightly against hers. Silence. But not empty. Now it's a problem, he said quietly. Alina let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. It already was. A faint exhale left him, almost like a quiet laugh, but not quite. Then, he stepped back. And just like that, the distance returned. The control. The walls. You should go, he said. The shift was immediate. Not cold, but necessary. Alina stared at him. You're serious? Yes. After that, his jaw tightened slightly. That's exactly why. Silence. And for the first time, it hurt. Not because of what happened, but because of what came after. Alina nodded slowly. Okay. She turned, walked to the door, paused, but she didn't look back. Because if she did, she wasn't sure she'd leave. The next morning, everything felt wrong. Too normal. Too quiet. Like the house was pretending nothing had happened. But she wasn't. And neither was he. She saw it immediately. At breakfast, Ethan didn't look at her. Not once. Jeff did. And he noticed everything. You okay? He asked quietly. Alina nodded. Too quickly. I'm fine. You don't look fine. I said I'm fine. Jeff leaned back slightly, studying her. Then, his gaze shifted. To Ethan. Then back to her. And something clicked. Not fully, but enough. Right, he muttered softly. And just like that, the triangle wasn't unspoken anymore. It was real. And it was breaking something. Even if no one said it out loud, the silence didn't break. It stretched. Across breakfast. Across the hallway. Across every glance that didn't happen, and every word that stayed unspoken. Alina felt it everywhere. In the way Ethan didn't look at her. In the way Jeff did. And somehow, both felt equally heavy. She tried to focus on work. On numbers. On structure. On something that made sense. But her mind kept going back. To that moment. To the way Ethan's hand felt against her skin. To the way he pulled away like it meant something he couldn't afford. And then, to Jeff. The way he had stepped back on the balcony. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. That difference. It stayed with her. Alina. She looked up to see Jeff. He stood by the door of the study, hands in his pockets, expression softer than usual. Can we talk? He asked. Her chest tightened slightly. Yeah, she said. They stepped out into the garden. The same place where things had once felt simple. But not anymore. Jeff didn't speak immediately. He walked a few steps ahead, then stopped. I don't like guessing, he said finally. Alina stayed quiet. So I'm not going to, he added, turning to face her. I'm just going to say it. Her heart started to race. I like you, he said. Simple. Clear. No hesitation. I liked you from the moment you walked in here pretending you weren't nervous, he continued. And it just didn't stop. Alina swallowed. You make things feel lighter, he said. Like I don't have to carry everything all the time. His voice softened. And I think I could make things lighter for you too. There it was. Not pressure. Not demand. Just honesty. I don't need you to answer me right now, he added quickly. I didn't want to pretend anymore. Alina looked at him. Really looked. And everything he said? It was real. He would make things easier. He would make her smile. He would give her something steady. And for a moment, that almost felt like enough. But something inside her didn't settle. And she hated that it didn't. Jeff, she started softly. He shook his head slightly, a small smile forming. Hey, it's okay. You don't have to say it back. That made it worse. Because he wasn't asking for anything. He was just offering. I don't want to lose this, he added quietly. Whatever this is. Alina's chest tightened. You won't, she said. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure it was true. That evening, the tension finally snapped. Not loudly, but enough. Alina found Ethan in his office again. Of course she did. He was standing by the window this time. Back turned. You can't keep doing this, she said. He didn't turn. Doing what? Pretending nothing happened. Silence. Then, I'm not pretending. Alina frowned. Then what are you doing? A pause. Then he turned. And the look in his eyes. It wasn't controlled anymore. I'm choosing not to act on it. Her heart clenched. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. It's harder. She took a step closer. Why? Ethan let out a slow breath. Because it complicates everything. It already does. That doesn't mean we make it worse. Alina shook her head slightly. You don't get to decide that alone. His jaw tightened. I'm trying to protect something. What? She asked. A pause. Then. Everything. That answer didn't satisfy her. It frustrated her. You don't even know what I feel, she said. Ethan's eyes locked onto hers. Yes, I do. The certainty in his voice. It shook her. Then say it, she challenged. Silence. Long. Heavy. And then. He stepped closer. Slowly. Like he had already lost this fight. You don't look at him the way you look at me, he said quietly. Her breath caught. And you don't stand this close to him without thinking about stepping closer, he added. Her heart was racing now. And you didn't stop me, he finished. That was it. No hiding. No pretending. Just truth. Raw. Uncomfortable. Real. Alina's voice softened. Then why are you still holding back? Ethan looked at her. And, for the first time, there was something almost vulnerable there. Because if I don't, he said quietly, I won't stop. The words settled deep. Not threatening. Not dangerous. Just honest. And somehow, that meant more than anything else. Alina took another step closer. You don't have to stop, she whispered. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Ethan's restraint broke. Not violently. Not suddenly. But completely. His hand found hers. Firm. Certain. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He pulled her closer. And kissed her again. Deeper. Not questioning. Not careful. Like he had already spent too much time holding back. Alina's hand tightened against him. And in that moment, there was no confusion. No comparison. Just feeling. When they pulled apart, everything felt different. Clearer. And heavier. Alina. She looked at him. And she knew. Not because it was easier. But because it wasn't. The next morning, she made her choice. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a rushed confession. But in something quieter. Something real. She found Jeff first. Of course she did. He deserved that. He was in the garden. Same place. Hey, he said, smiling slightly. You look like you've decided something. She nodded. I have. He held her gaze. Didn't look away. Okay, he said softly. Alina stepped closer. You were right, she said. You would have made things lighter. A small breath left him. But that's not what I need, she added. There it was. The moment. Jeff nodded slowly. I figured, he said quietly. But his voice didn't break. Didn't crack. It just softened. You deserve someone who doesn't have to think twice, Alina said. And you deserve someone you don't have to convince yourself to choose, he replied. Her chest tightened. I'm sorry. Jeff smiled. A real one. Don't be, he said. At least you didn't lie to me. That mattered. More than anything. He stepped back. Go, he added gently. Alina hesitated. Then nodded. And walked away. She found Ethan exactly where she expected him. Standing still. Like always. But this time, when he looked at her, he didn't hide it. Did you? Yes, she said softly. He didn't move. Didn't speak. He just waited. And that told her everything. Alina stepped closer. I chose you, she said. Simple. Honest. Real. Ethan's breath shifted slightly. Not dramatic. Not obvious. But enough. You're sure? He asked quietly. She nodded. Yeah, she said. Because I don't have to convince myself with you. A pause. Then, for the first time, Ethan smiled. Not fully. Not brightly. But real. And somehow, that meant everything. He reached for her. This time. Without hesitation. And when he pulled her close, it didn't feel like a risk anymore. It felt like something that was always going to happen. Something that didn't need to be forced. Something that simply found its way. Some stories end loudly. This one didn't. It ended in quiet moments. In shared looks, in the absence of doubt. Jeff didn't disappear. He stayed. Different. But not broken. And Ethan? He didn't become softer for the world. Just for her. And Alina. She didn't choose the easier love. She chose the one she couldn't walk away from. If this story made you feel something, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Were you Team Jeff or Team Ethan? And more importantly, would you choose comfort or connection? Because sometimes, the right choice isn't the one that feels safe. It's the one that feels true. Until next time, this is Soul Storyverse TV.